the old school parenting was they just let you go. They just put you in your crib and you scream for hours. And I honestly think that's why a lot of us have so many issues now.
So and trauma and like
I'm gonna snuggle that baby because that baby's not gonna let me do it forever. And that's just how I look at it personally.
Welcome to the Foxy Mama podcast, where creativity meets parenthood. I'm your host, Lindsay, and each week we'll explore the world of creative entrepreneurship and business through the lens of motherhood. Join us as we chat with inspiring mamas and parents sharing their stories, insights, and the art of balancing it all. Whether you're an artist, entrepreneur, or just navigating parenthood, this is your space to find inspiration, helpful tips, and support. Now let's get Foxy Mama.
Hey, I'm Lindsay Brace, host of the Foxy Mama podcast, and I am thrilled, excited. This is going to be a regular occurrence. My lovely co-host, we're going to call it Casual Conversations with Casey, former roommate, longtime friend, mom, lady guru, extravaganza, martini maker, roommate, I don't know, all the things. Casey Welby O'Day. Hey there, lady.
Hey, Lindsay. What's going on?
Hey. So, you had come to me, like we were chatting and you're like, well, I have an idea. You were like, I'm going to come on. Let's talk about like good old days, sharing about our lives, talking about stuff that, you know, the hijinks we used to do and just the fun that we had, like living together, but also like seeing all the things that has brought me here to the Foxy Mama podcast, from doing media and marketing and all things tech and digital, all that world. And I'm like, this is a great idea. Because it's just so interesting how much our lives have changed, especially after having children. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how we know each other from your point of view.
So we know each other from when I started working at your dad's bar. One of our mutual friends, she actually stopped working there because she was having a baby, and that's how I got my job there. And then we became roommates and thick as thieves. It was some crazy times. Now, you know, I'm a totally different person. So I say it often, I don't even know who I am anymore. You know, being a mom is crazy. It's hard and you lose yourself. And that was part of the reason too why I was saying, hey, let's do this. Let's talk about who we were and how do we even figure out who we are now? Because it's your mom. You're not your mom and your wife.
Yeah.
You're not Casey. You're not Lindsay anymore. Those people are gone. So that's why I wanted to have the opportunity to sit and do this little show today. Yeah.
It is it's definitely interesting. Like if you had asked me 20 years ago, right, the whole children thing, I was just like, oh no, I can't vision myself like as a mom. I can't.
Cradle midgets.
Cradle midgets. Like when your brother, like, when his daughter was born, I was just like, oh, she's a little cradle midget. Like, and I was like, I don't know what to do with kids, which is like funny because I loved being around children and I was like such a child at heart. But the idea of like having a child of my own, I was just like, I don't know if I am fully capable of that. Because like I had no idea what even I was doing in my life. Like I had no idea like direction wise, and like I was basically living not even paycheck to paycheck. It was tip jar to tip jar, you know, and like working like multiple jobs. And, you know, you mentioned like working at my dad's restaurant, like it wasn't consistent tip wise, like sometimes you had a really good night and you like walked out of it with $400 and you're like, all right. And then sometimes it was like, here's $10. You're like, yay. So,
and you know what I think about too is like back then too, is like thinking about like, oh, how could I even take care of someone else and take care of a child? Because there were days we come home from work and be like, oh crap, it's like 4 a.m. and I didn't eat all day. Like, how are you possibly going to think about taking care of another little human and keeping them alive when you don't even know how you're keeping yourself alive at that point?
Yeah. I didn't even know how I survived a lot of the things that happened.
You know, I was actually thinking like the old apartment that was across from Jack's draft house when that one morning, I think you heard boom, the cops breaking into the neighbor's apartment.
Oh my God. Yeah.
They were selling drugs or making drugs. Or I can't even remember.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like, so backstory to this. So Casey and I, our apartment was, not in the greatest section of town, but it was good price. Like that was the beauty of it. And it was like a nice layout, even though the bathroom wasn't updated since like the 40s. Like it had that like tile on it, like this like green, weird tile. And there, like, I remember it was like a long night at work the night before, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to get to work the next day. And I was in school at the time, and there was like this thud, and I'm like, what is going on? And I like look outside, and it's like full men in like hazmat gear, and they're like, get back inside, I'm like, what is going on? And the next door apartment, they were making meth. Like,
and he was like 90 years old. That was doing
she was 72.
Yeah.
Her and her grandson. Like, and I'm like, I am the same person that now is a mom. Like, this is where I chose to live because I was like, oh, it's a great price. Like, and if we split the rent, like, this is going to be great. And like, so it's just really interesting to see, especially like now I'm like super worried. Because someone's like been breaking into like the mailboxes along the street, like stealing the mail. And like, that's like the big, like, I'm like, wow, I'm like, maybe this isn't safe. When 20 years ago, I was living in a place, you know, the one side had, you know, the meth makers. And then the other side, the other apartment was this cat lady. And I'm using that term because she had like 20 cats and like fumigated or whatever. And all the fleas came into like that, like our apartment and like that. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Now you have 2 children and they're separated, like, in age groups, right? So 10 years apart. What do you think the difference is from having a child in your 30s and now having a child in your late 30s, early 40s? Like,
let's see. I had Kellen. I was about to turn 30, and I had her when I was about to turn 40. So, my difference, you know what it is I have a lot more patience now than I did then. But I'm so much more tired now than I was then. I'm exhausted every day, all day. And she sleeps through the night now because she's almost 2. So, that's the sleep thing, and I'm tired. But like I said, like I have a lot more patience. But I also know now what I didn't know, that I know what's going to happen. Like, what's the next stage of her life is going to be, because I had already gone through it. So I'm definitely more patient for sure as I got older. Yeah.
Now, is there a difference? Because Callan's a boy, Alora's a girl. What was the difference with kind of like the early years tantrums. I know so many people are like, oh, having a boy is so much easier. And then some people are like, oh, having a boy is so much harder. What is your take on that?
He was such an easy baby. I'd say all the time, if she was my first, she would have been my last. She gives me a run for my money every single day. And everybody goes, well, she is your daughter. She's very headstrong. She wants what she wants, and that's it. She'll throw that tantrum. If you tell her no, she's going to throw that tantrum. Kellen, on the other hand, he never did that. I would tell him no, and he would stop what he was doing, and he listened. This one does not. She's a climber. He wasn't. She's jumping off furniture, from furniture to furniture, and she's crazy. She's the wild child for sure. And she's a totally different child when she's home with daddy. When mommy comes home from work, dad's like, that's it. That calm child is gone. And that's when she turns into the roaring beast. But yeah, you tell her no, and it's doesn't end well for us. So we find ourselves often being like, okay, here, and just giving her what she wants, so we don't have to listen to the shriek, because she's also one of those. Raquel never was that either. Yeah, he always listens.
Now within the last decade, so much has changed, like technology wise, growth wise, and I say growth like learning and development, on birthing processes, on healthcare, on everything. What did you see the difference like from your first pregnancy and then this pregnancy, and all the like for me, I mean, I don't have a child from 10 years ago or something like that, and I think we lost like power now. Yay.
Nice.
Everything's like running on auto. But so the difference with my family members being like, oh, he's not sleeping through the night, just put a little cereal in the milk.
Yeah.
Like, he'll be fine. And I'm like, and this was like, he was like a newborn, like 2 weeks old. I'm like, oh, well, I'm primarily like breastfeeding. And they're like, oh, you're not doing formula? Like, it was like this big thing. And they're like, well, still put a little sweet cereal in there. A common thing is like, oh, they're teething, put whiskey on the gums. Yeah. Like, that is like still said. What do you think the difference is a decade and so like later with like learning and development?
So when I was pregnant with Kellen, obviously there was still internet, but it wasn't like how it is now. There wasn't all these social platforms with groups of moms and other pregnant women talking about all their different experiences and stuff, and giving each other the encouragement to maybe not everybody can breastfeed. And, like I've always thought, like, as long as your baby's fed and healthy, it is what it is. Both of my kids have had breast milk and formula. My son, I only breastfed for 3 months because I didn't know that I had to drink like a gallon of water a day and eat high amounts of food so that I could produce that milk. So unfortunately, I lost my milk, and that was really hard on me. And that's when he switched over to formula. So then with my daughter, I knew I had to do all those things. And then they came out with that body armor, and they're like, hey, drink this because of the electrolytes. And that also is going to help you produce all this milk. And it did. And we had a great full year of breastfeeding. And like I was talking to you yesterday or whenever, it's like, oh, you're like, ow. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, that's when I stopped. And I went strictly pumped at that point. I was like, oh, no, I can't do that. So that's a great thing. Like I love, like, the internet can be good and it can be bad. It's you go on Google because you have a pain in your side. You're like, oh, I'm going into early labor. But at the same time, you got the good of it where you have all these moms to talk to now, and other researching to do like with your pregnancy and your afterwards with your care. There's definitely a lot more products available too. Like after I had Kellen, they just handed you a container of those witch hazel pads and said, see you later. There wasn't, you had only the Perry bottle that they gave you at the hospital. That was it. They didn't have like the ones that they have now where you could actually take care of yourself after birth. And the same thing with the breast pads now. And now we have reusable ones so that we're saving the environment and we're not constantly throwing them away and whatnot. And, the Haka. The Haka was my best friend with my daughter because I had mastitis a lot. So, so then, that's, I learned that trick on the internet where you put some Epsom salt in the bottom of the Haka with some hot water while you shower. It pulls it right out. And that's something I wish every mom knew too. And whenever I see anything on those groups, like now, I obviously, she's almost 2, so we're not doing that anymore. But whenever I see a poor mom out there, she's like, what do I do? Immediately, I'm like, get your Haka. Because it's painful. I was so sick. I couldn't get out of bed the one day. It was so bad. Like I was like nauseous from it and everything. It got so bad.
Wow.
They wanted to give me antibiotics. And I was like, let me try this first. Because, breastfeeding, I don't want to put things in my body while she's eating too. So there's a lot of changes in the 10 years. It's crazy. Yeah.
It is a blessing to have like mom groups and like we have a mom group and we have like a Marco Polo thing and a WhatsApp chat. And it's a group we kind of all did like these birthing classes together. Mm-hmm. So it's like really awesome to like have that. Our babies are relatively around the same age. So like I don't feel alone when I'm just like, oh my goodness, like the hot topic right now is like they're kind of they're calling them alligator rolls, like, like won't sit still and doesn't want to be changed and like moving and squirming, like all about. And it like was an instant shift from being like, oh, okay, like you took this toy away. That's great. And now it's like, oh, you took this toy away and then having a complete like meltdown. So I'm just like, is that just my baby? And it's like, no, these other moms are going through it as well. And just like sharing that, like, you're talking about the Haka and the Epsom salt. I'm like, wow, that's a really good idea. Like, this is so important for us as moms, as people going through this to share. But on the other side of things, there's also like that unsolicited advice. There's, things in mom groups where you're just like posting a photo and you're like excited about it. And they're just like, what are you doing? Like, you can't put a photo of yourself like breastfeeding, like on the internet, like blah, 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 blah. And I get so upset with stuff like that. Cause I was just like, oh really? But it's okay for like, a severed deer from deer hunting to be like plastered all over the internet. Like, I don't understand you, Facebook. You have no problem with that, but like something completely natural. But it's like, that was the hard part for me to get over, was the being a new mom and then the unsolicited advice, which is like, you're wearing your baby too low. They shouldn't have their hands covered. They should have their hands covered. And it was like everybody having their own opinions.
The cry it out method too. That one always bugged me a lot. I could never. Just walk away and like just let that child scream like that. I get it, like point, but like the old school parenting was they just let you go. They just put you in your crib and you scream for hours. And I honestly think that's why a lot of us have so many issues now.
So and trauma and like
I'm going to love I'm going to snuggle that baby because that baby's not going to let me do it forever. And that's just how I look at it personally.
They like a handbook from like the 30s or 40s talks about never picking up your child, like letting them go, only picking them up like when you're going to feed them, no cuddling, or anything like that. And like how much has changed. We're like learning how the brain develops, how, conditioning works, how like these methods. So Dave and I did this sleep course, like this baby's sleep course when he was about maybe like 2, when our son was about 2 or 3 months, right? And it was offered here locally with a sleep specialist. And she had mentioned how many parents she had to correct, like working with their children, doing one-on-one sleep things because they tried the cry it out method. And then their babies had like trauma, like literal trauma. and like afraid to even sleep or afraid to like lose that because they knew that they were going to be like put into a room and like just being like cry.
Yeah.
And hearing her say like, well, you know, it's these parents did it for 2 years with the cry it out method. And now I'm coming in to like help retrain, do all these things and save them from like this traumatic experience, because it is like, imagine like you're put into like you have no idea where you are, right? As an adult, like just imagine like this scenario, you have no idea where you are. You don't know what's what. People are talking a whole other different language that you don't understand. They put you in this room and then they leave.
Yeah.
Like, how would you feel? Like, and they lock the door and you're like, how do I get out? What is this? And you could possibly maybe hear them from another room, but you're not like, that language still isn't developed. So it's like all these like situations, like, yes, that is traumatic. So why wouldn't it be traumatic for a baby as well?
Yeah.
So it's like very interesting to see like the different, parent scenarios. And especially like, I think of things that my mom often says, oh, he's not sleeping through the night. I'm like, well, no, he wakes up like every 2.5 hours to like eat. And this is like when he was a newborn. I'm like, he wakes up every like 2.5 hours to eat. And, I'm breastfeeding. And she's like, oh, you and Nicole slept through the night. And if you guys didn't, like, I'd just let you like cry it out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I have high functioning anxiety and
exactly
all these different things that I'm like working through and like, pretty much, I love my therapist, but like working through like all that stuff. And I want, my child to have a beautiful experience. I want him to have a feeling of a loving home,
For sure.
And yeah. And I am grateful that 20 years ago, I was just like, oh, I'm not going to have kids or whatever. And like waited until now. Even now I'm just like, I was not prepared, but the thing is, you're never going to be prepared.
Oh, never. I mean, I knew what I was
never
to. And I mean, I had when I had Kellen, friends is like, Ryan and I were just laughing about this the other day. We were driving up Mulberry Street because I actually had Alora at CNC. And I was like, drive through that light. I'm not going to make it. Because I was having her in the truck. Like, I was convinced.
Yeah.
Kellen, I woke up at 4:30 in the morning with a contraction. And I didn't go have them until 4:32 that afternoon. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning with the contraction, and I was like, hey, I'm good. I could sleep through them like in between. Next one came in 5 minutes. I was like, maybe I should get in the shower. At 7:11 a.m. She came fast. Like when I got to the hospital, when the midwife checked me, she's like, whoop, let's go. It's time to go. Like that baby is right there. Like, so like, it's crazy. Like you think you know what's going to happen. It's always different. It's always going to be different. Yeah. So you can give your advice.
And everybody's stories, everybody's experiences are different. And I think, talking about, the difference in like the digital age and how much we've come, I think it's also important to not put ourselves down when we're scrolling and seeing like, oh, this mom has her shit together. My house looks like a shit show or whatever. Like, you don't know what's on the other side of that screen. Like right now, like, oh, this is a nice like backdrop and a curtain or whatever. It's literally a curtain. There's a closet. Our closet is behind here and our makeshift. But on this side, on the other side, we got a pack and play. We got toys going on and like craziness. I have not showered today.
Same. All day.
And I was lucky I got a shower in yesterday, I think. Yes, I did. Yes. But like that importance and too, a lot of things too with having a child now that's very different than 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago. Is majority of the moms are in the workforce. you know, and majority, you need those two incomes. You need more than that.
Yeah, for sure.
Multiple sources of income. Not even like, to have your own house, but like just to rent, to survive, to afford all the things, you know, for a child, the hospital bills, even. Yeah. We were having this discussion in the mom group so I mentioned that a lot of our babies are around the same age. Jack Fox, he is 8 months, right? So some mom, it was like, she's 9.5, 10 months. And she's like, I just got a bill from having an epidural. She's like, I thought I paid the bill, but now here it is, almost a year later. Am I getting this bill for the epidural? And it's like $1,000 and some because it was a specialist and like all this stuff and like working through. And it's just like how to navigate that world of like just bills and like being bombarded and being that feeling of struggle. You know, I think as moms, we all feel that struggle and that wanting to provide. And it means, you know, we're doing something right if we're worried about having enough for our child. It means that we're a good mom. We want to provide and do all the things, but it's hard. It's hard on that mental front. And then on top of it, you have mom guilt. I have mom guilt when I leave him.
Oh yeah.
I have, yeah. And it's very different and a very different experience than the role my husband plays, the role that Dave's playing, right? He'll leave and he'll be like, you know, on a shoot or working or something like that. And he's in it and he's fully like, you know, involved in his work, and he comes home and it's baby time. Where me, it's like, if I'm on a shoot or I'm doing things, I'm like, okay, is baby okay? Is not to say that he's not thinking about that, but our brains are just like,
why you're
thinking multiple different things at a given time. And
I feel like it has to do with too. I was thinking about that earlier. Is it because like that child was growing inside of us, so we have like that certain bond with the child that the father's not going to have? Like, so like that, it's just that instinct. Like I was saying the other day, like when Kellen was a baby, I missed a lot. I was still bartending. That was the only job I could do because I couldn't afford to put him in daycare. And his father and I, even after we split, we said no daycare. And the way his schedule is, he's 24 hours on, 48 off. So our custody was 70-30 before he'd gotten remarried or married. So, you know, I still have that guilt, and he's going to be 12 on Friday. It's like, I missed so much. Like I didn't get to put him to bed every night, and I'd wake up in the morning. I'd just be so tired. I know I'd be grumpy because I didn't get home until 3 a.m. from work, and now it's 7 and I got to bring him to school. And I'm just like one eye, I'm like, come on, bud, like get up. And like, you lose your temper because you're so tired and you're so overworked and you're so stressed out. You're a single mom. How am I paying for Christmas and a birthday that are like 2 weeks apart as a single parent in your own apartment? It was hard. It was so hard. And I mean, like, not that it's not hard now. It's definitely still hard. But I mean, definitely being married now with the child's definitely made things a lot easier because it's the second income. It really, really has. So, and I'm blessed. My husband was also in the military. So we get an income from that as well still, so that I could only work part-time. So I go to work in the morning for my dad, so that if I can't come to work because the kids are sick, I'm not losing my job. I'm not getting suspended or written up or anything like that. My dad's just like, okay, I get it. I hate it. I hate people saying, I feel like I'm a little blessed to be able to do that now with her. I stayed home with her for almost 1.5 years because I had to quit my job that I had when I was pregnant. Because when I went back to work, she had gotten RSV. So she was only 2 months old, and I had to take off 1.5 weeks work, and I got written up for it. And I was like, you know what? It's not worth it. I'd rather be broke and be home with my child than work for a company that doesn't understand that mom comes first.
Love the products you're hearing us chat about on the Foxy Mama podcast? Find all the featured items on my personal Amazon shops page at amazon.com/shop/TheLindsayBoo. Happy shopping!
Then it's all like, I think how blessed I am and the opportunities that I've been blessed with, and being like, okay, I could work for myself. You know, I make my own hours, but I'm constantly on, right? Mm-hmm. Like sometimes I'm working at midnight. Sometimes I'm, working at 2 p.m, or like random times, but like throughout the day. But I'm blessed that I could be like, okay, well, I need to close this or I need to do that. And be with baby or do different things. But looking back, especially like in the early months, I wish I had taken that time off, because we couldn't afford that maternity leave. Like a lot of people were like, oh, how like, are you taking off for maternity? And I'm like, I'm not. Like, we can't do that. We need those 2 incomes. We need that income. We need my income. And I remember it was the day after he was born, not even 24 hours. And there was like a glitch, in posting on behalf of like my client, and it was coming up an error. And here I am with like my phone and my laptop working from the hospital bed after having like 19-hour labor, then 3 hours of pushing and like all this stuff. And I'm here like doing that and multitasking. And at one point, like I'm breastfeeding too. Yeah. And it's just the struggle is real, but I'm blessed that I can be like, okay, no, like there's so many women out there that have to be like, well, they have to go to that job that doesn't support their family, or doesn't understand that they need off because their child has RSV, or doesn't understand that daycare cost $1,000 a month, like that, or plus, like, and it depends on like where you are. He's not in daycare, and I am, that's the hard part of is deciding like, when do we do that? How do we do that? And just all those things. But it's just so interesting. We first started this conversation being like, we're just completely different people. Like, I don't know who Lindsay is anymore. Like, I love myself more than I ever did. And love who I've become. And I think back to that girl in her 20s, and I wish I loved her more. Like, I wish that I gave her more credit.
Yep.
And told her like how ridiculously strong she was. And like, the funny thing was, one of the things that I was worried about with becoming a mom and just pregnancy in general was, I was told it's going to ruin your body. Your body is going to be gross. It's going to be disgusting. It's, all these different things, from multiple women, from multiple family members, from my own mother was just like, oh, just wait till you have kids. Like, they destroy your boobs. They destroy like whatever. Mm-hmm. And having that negativity on it. So like in my 20s, I was like, well, I'm so uncomfortable in my own skin now. Didn't love myself then, like that body image. Plus, like, we grew up in that heroin chic era where you had to be like 90 pounds soaking wet or whatever.
Yeah, and on a diet. I'm like, you're like 105 pounds. Why are you on a diet? Oh, I need to lose.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Yeah. And like now I'm like, I fucking love my body. Like, I've created life. I have this appreciation for my body. I have appreciation for my boobs.
Yeah.
And just like, the love that I have for my body. And I think a lot of that has to do with that I've created life. I've created this human who is just perfect.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
And yeah,
I that's the difference too. Is like after Kellen, Tim and I had split when Kel was only 1.5, I think. So, like I went through a huge transition where like I wasn't comfortable in my body. If he didn't want me anymore, then who's going to want me? Now that I have a kid and my body's disgusting and I have stretch marks and whatnot. And I dropped a ton of weight and I was back to being my skinny self. And then, when I met my husband, he was like, eat a cheeseburger. He's like, eat a cheeseburger. And I mean, I got more comfortable. Obviously, I wasn't overweight by any means. Like I was a healthy weight then. And then I had my daughter, and I didn't have that thought process after her like I did with Kellen. Like, oh my God, I have to drop that weight. I have been the same weight and the same weight today that I was the day I walked out of that hospital almost 2 years ago. And my husband is so supportive and tells me every day I'm beautiful. And that like, if I'm having a bad day and I'm like, I can't wear this, and I throw something across the room and he's like, why, what's wrong? It looked great. I'm like, no, I'm fat. And he's like, you're not fat. You're beautiful. Like you got this baby. Like, don't think like that. He is so great about that. And that has such a huge difference in me. And I think my parenting, honestly too, like, because now I'm happy and I have a supportive spouse that cares too, that wants to see me happy and healthy mentally and physically. So that's a huge difference too. It really is. Your spouse has so much to do with your body image after having that child. It's crazy.
Yeah. And that just mindset of like positivity and just the positive words too. Like just, looking at myself in my early 20s or whatever, I'd be like, oh, you're so ugly. You're so fat. Like, why can't you fit into these jeans or like whatever? And now just having that positive mindset. And, I think also it comes, with age maybe, or, wisdom.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, the things so I want to dive more into living together in our early 20s, like working and just the stuff that we used to do and media. So I've been in this media world, right, since you've known me, right? And just like evolving. And it's such like kind of like a metaphor for life that things are always changing and it's always developing, and kind of like losing that mindset of like, oh, well, this is the way that I've always done things, to, okay, this is the way that things are done now. How can I evolve? How can I grow? And back in the day, I broadcasted on JTV, Justin TV. And you were a part of that. You were a guest on many like things. And so for those that don't know, many people won't know what Justin TV is, but it is now called Twitch, which is like a huge platform. But back then, no one was broadcasting their life live. And I saw this opportunity and I'm just like, I think this is a really cool idea. It's a really cool niche. At the time, I was getting paid by YouTube to make YouTube shorts and do all that stuff. And I'm just like, I'm going to broadcast my life live.
Yeah.
And I look at those episodes now, like I look at the former videos and I'm like, who was that person? Not that I was like a bad person, not that I was like, getting drunk and partying every night or doing all the things, but I was just like weird.
Definitely. And I came home and I'm like, Linz, and you were sleeping and you had the computer recorded it was on while you were sleeping. And I'm like, you really recorded yourself, your live while you were sleeping. What are you doing? Yeah. It was crazy. I don't know.
Yeah. And it was because it was just like, all right, for this time period, I'm going to do it 24/7. Because it was like, not like an OnlyFans or something like that. It was nothing like that. It was absolutely nothing. Like, yeah, it was just like talking and interacting with people, relating kind of. I always say this about, the internet and social media is that it helps to like whittle the world down to like a more manageable size.
Yeah.
And so these people, like we were all connecting. So sometimes I'd be like playing a video game, and they'd be like watching me play a video game, like literally like the screen, not like how it is now, like sharing a screen and they're watching me play. It's like, no, I'm sitting in my living room, like with the camera towards, and they're like watching that. But the one time, so when you lived with me, I had Apollo. Apollo was, to me, the greatest dog that ever lived.
Except for when
and oh yeah, shiny shoes. So yeah, and he only ate one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he was a Siberian Husky who was larger than normal Siberian Huskies. He was like over 100 pounds, but full of love. Yeah. But when you lived with me, he was a puppy. He was in puppy stage. So he was like a year old, not even. So he wasn't fixed at that time. Mm-hmm. And he liked getting into our shoes, but he was very much a part of the episodes. So him being like my first kind of idea, like my first child, let's say, of like parenting. Yeah. And here is like, wow, I have a child. This is the person that has a child. We were drunk, you and I, and we're like eating food and talking on JTV, and the dog clearly has to go to the bathroom, like clearly is at the door trying to get out, giving us all the signs, and we're like, no, we're just having fun, like woo, life. And he just goes on camera. And like, I'll never forget it. You're like, he just peed a bucket full, and we're just like drunk, right? Now this is the same person who now is in charge of keeping a human alive. Like
scary.
It is scary.
Buckets, like, hey, look, our dog's peeing on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, he's just peeing on the floor. Ha ha ha.
I know,
but like how much?
Like our apartment was not dirty by any means. Like we were talking about earlier.
No.
The meth. Yeah. Our apartment was clean. Our apartment was.
Yes, I did get rid of. So it was like a throw rug. I did get rid of that rug. It was like a red throw rug, whatever. And I was just like, rather than cleaning, I remember just rolling up the rug and throwing it over the banister of our apartment to land in the dumpster. And I was like, oh, good. I cleaned it up. It's kind of like, do you ever see, so the movie Big Daddy?
Yeah.
With Adam Sandler. Mm-hmm. So he, doesn't know the first thing about parenting, and the kid just like eats all the sugar, and he's like jumping around, and then just like looks at him and goes, bleh, and just like vomits. Yeah. And he's like, oh, it'll be okay. He just like puts newspaper over it and like walks away. Yeah. Like that is the equivalent of me in my 20s. And now in my 40s, I am keeping a human alive. Mm-hmm. So I think that, I want to talk more of that trajectory of life changes. Yeah. And you kind of like develop and evolve, and like no one has any idea what they're doing. No one. And if you think, and I've said this like, on a previous episode, if someone's like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing, they're either a psychopath or they're completely lying or they're both.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, as parents, I think it's so important for us to be like, no one has a clue what they are doing, and it's completely okay. And for them to do what is best for them, for if you want to do formula versus breastfeeding because you're not producing enough milk, or you're just formula is easy, or breastfeeding is easier, like whatever works for you works for you.
Yeah, same schedules. Like people, like some people follow a strict nap schedule and a strict bedtime schedule and everything. I mean, like both of my children, I did not do that too. I went with the flow. I did what they wanted to do, and they eventually put themselves on a schedule. And once they did, I followed their own schedule, but I let them make that schedule. And I know some people don't agree with that, but Nobody's going to agree on everything ever. And you, like you said, you do what's best for you and what works best for your family.
Yeah. And with the sleeping topic, like that's something like I texted you about when we were talking about that and sharing, because moms that I know, they're like, okay, well, 7:30 is their bedtime, or I put my kid down at 7:30, or they take a nap at 11 a.m. and 2:30, like on the dot, on the nose, or we're doing this sleep training. And I'm just like, my day doesn't operate like that.
Mm-hmm.
I take meetings at random times. I have to be available for my clients. But I also have to have like different days where we might have a shoot that runs a lengthy amount of time. And it runs through the middle of like a nap schedule, or runs in a different time. And my son does not go to bed at a specific time. He kind of picks his time. Sometimes he's just like, oh, I'm tired at 8:00.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, wow. But the thing is, if he falls asleep at 8:00, he's going to wake up for 11:30 and be wide-eyed and bushy-tailed for a while. So for me to be like, okay, well, I'm going to try to put him to bed at 8:00 every night, it doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
And so when I texted you, I was like, what time? What time, when Alora was like 8 months, and like, how did you do sleep? Did you do sleep training? Am I normal? Like if I'm not putting him to bed at a certain time and letting him decide, and you're like, you're normal.
Yeah. Like I said, I told you that.
Yeah.
Ryan works second shift. So he works through 11. She'd be in bed. He'd come home. He has a very deep voice and it travels. And she would hear, I swear, she would hear it and she'd wake up, and then that was a wrap. We'd have to go upstairs and get her because she would be crying. And then she'd be up and playing because now it's playtime because daddy's home. And then she'd be up from like 11:15 until like 1:30 in the morning, until I'm like, all right, let's start the process over again. Like, I know you're still tired. Let's get to bed. And you know what? It's not going to last forever. Just let it be. Don't fight it. You just got to go with the flow of what that baby wants. They'll figure it out on their own.
And what works for you too. Like if, certain things, like, I'm battling the decision of putting him in his crib, right? In his nursery, and like moving him from our bedroom into his own room. Yeah. And I'm like, I am not there yet. I have a lot of anxieties and paranoia, and I'm like, okay, he's breathing. Yeah. I'm like looking over, I'm like watching, and I'm like, I'll touch his back or touch his belly, and like,
oh, yeah, girl,
are you okay? Like, and
12, and I still do it to him. So that never goes away. That never goes away.
Yeah.
Ever.
I just said to Dave, I'm like, is this my life now? Am I just going to be like constantly like worried and thinking about him? And like, I'm looking around the house, right? And there is a big difference when Dave has him. So when my husband has him to when I have him, and like, just, I look and I'm like, oh my God, like he could get into this, he could get into that. Like, and I'm like leaving the house the other day, and I look on the floor, and there's like a little piece of plastic from when my husband like opened up an Amazon box. And I was like, oh my God, that's a choking hazard. He could like, choke, and like, cause he's crawling around and doing everything. And Dave had him, the other day, like, and I walk in, I was just like, Dave was like, why don't you just sleep a little bit longer, get some rest in. It was a rough night. And I was like, oh, great. Thanks. Right. So he had him in another room and clothes. And like, so when I woke up and I come into the room, and he has it like weirdly blocked off to the best of his abilities, I guess. Right. But using like a trash can as a blocker, a bag. And the baby and my son is playing with my husband's shoes, his socks, the rope, the tie from his robe, and a cord that wasn't plugged in. Because he's like, oh, it's not plugged in. It's fine.
Yeah, 100%. And so the only thing, I keep she was sitting inside of an Amazon box, and it was too small for her. It was like literally like this big. She has herself crammed. She like stepped into it. and just crouched down. She had herself stuck in it, just sitting there like this, watching Beauty and the Beast. And I'm like, I'm not buying her anything for Christmas. I said, she's getting boxes and bags. Like, that's it.
Yeah. Boxes. Yeah.
People spent all these money on toys. And I told like our parents, I was like, please don't buy toys. Like, she does not need any more toys. She has enough. She doesn't even play with all the ones that she has. Play with the same ones. So I try to rotate, like take certain things away and then pull things out. Don't. And they're like, well, what do we get her then? I'm like, take her somewhere. Take her.
Exactly.
To the trampoline park. Take her to the aquarium. Like, and I same thing with Kellen. I told him something. I'm like, he doesn't need any video games. He doesn't need anything. And then they're like, what do you want? I'm like, give me a grocery gift card. Like, what am I doing?
Yes.
What is it?
Yes.
Like, old me would be like, I want the new Gucci purse. Like, now I'm like, what a grocery card? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
That's I'm like going through, and I'm grateful for those that want to get us gifts and do things for the holidays. But at the same time, like, I'm doing that toy rotation. And that, I think, because growing up, it was all about that more meant better, even though it was like cheap stuff, right? It was just like, oh, I'd rather spend $50 at the dollar store for 50 items for you than $50 on one thing, you know, kind of mindset. And I am, you know, kind of breaking that cycle of that hoarding. You know, a lot of people in my family are hoarders, and I want things very minimal, like that minimalist style, and doing the toy rotation. And I'm so big on experiences. Yeah. And being like, oh, well, we don't need, like, I don't want toys. He doesn't want the toys that he plays with them for a second and then wants the spoon that mommy has.
Exactly.
You know, or wants something that because he's seeing me use this object. So he thinks it's a toy or he wants to play with it. And he's much more happier playing with the kitchen spoons, pots and pans, like, the bin that I have, like, some of the toys in, like the chew rings and things like that, he will take and dump out, turn it around and start hitting it. He wants it as a drum, like, wants it as that. Like, he doesn't care the toys inside. He wants the box, right? So why force toys, right? So my thing is, like, I don't want any plastic or battery operated toys, like things that like make noise, like wooden. We're doing a like Waldorf style education, but with a Montessori approach to like toys and certain aspects of bringing that in. And for Christmas, I'm building this list to send to family who are just like, oh, I'm getting him like the cutest, latest, whatever thing. And I'm like, no. Like, we'd rather, you know, our nature pass. Yeah. The nature center, which is kind of like a zoo of sorts, but it's animals native to North Carolina, rehabilitation center, and it's great. And we have a pass, and we take him often. I'm like, renew our pass. Yeah. You know, I'd like swim lessons. I really want him to learn swimming. Like, can you know, purchase a YMCA gift card, those experiences, because those are the lasting memories. Those are the things, you know, that we'll remember, especially at like such a young age, right? Yeah. And then the things that like last are like, I am 40s, my 40s, right? Man. I have a stuffed animal that is 38 years young, that stays in the bed with me. And I treasure that more than anything, right? Object wise, right? Yeah. Obviously, I treasure my son and my family and everything. But like that object, my baby
blanket, and my daughter sleeps with it now. And this is the first person, like, that thing was in bed with me like my whole life. Like, it has a hole in it for my stick my thumb through and suck my thumb when I was a little baby. Yeah, no.
Yeah. And I think they know that. I think they feel the love because Jack loves Snoopy.
Yeah.
And he has. My family has, like, my mom got him a Snoopy doll. My dad got him a Snoopy, like, being like, oh, he could have his own Snoopy now. They're brand new. They're white and fluffy. Does he go, like, I'm sorry to say if they hear this podcast, like, no.
Sorry.
He'd rather my old dirty Snoopy, probably because it smells like me. It's love. I tell Dave all the time, I'm like, it's the Velveteen Rabbit. It's his velvet, like it's that value. He is real in the sense of real to him, real to me, the memories, the love. So it's really about creating those experiences and just, but it's so interesting to see how much our lives has changed. So that's why I want to have you on like multiple podcasts, and like every now and again, like we'll come on and do conversations with Casey, casual, cool. The what?
Coffee cups as big as your head.
Yeah, coffee cups. That was another thing. So often when you were my co-host on JTV, we would go to a little cafe and they had gigantic cappuccinos. And we would sit there and talk live, do a live broadcast and tell people what we were having for lunch and hold up these giant coffee mugs. Oddly enough, the only thing I have is water, my water jug. Yeah.
I do have
it's so
big for your head though.
Yeah. We'll have to do that for our next episode together. But having these conversations, sharing what things that we're going through in life, and just letting moms know that everybody is different. Everybody's trajectory is different, but we're all in this together. And like, don't worry about like the scroll. Like I think a lot of it is like, well, this mom has this, or why can't I have this for my child? And that worry mindset. And also, am I doing this right?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, so I want this podcast, especially, to be a source of, hey, you're not in this alone. And my view is different from your view, and your view is different from mine or from theirs or other moms, but let's support each other in our journey of parenthood.
Yeah.
Because it's a journey. It is.
It's a full-time.
Yeah.
It's a full-time job in itself. It's hard. It is so hard.
Yeah. So what, I like to ask like recommendations, what you're reading, what you're listening to, what your little ones love to watch, read, listen, all things like that. So what are your recommendations? What's on the plate?
What's on my playlist? I listen to the Vanished and the Morbid podcast all the time. I'm a true crime junkie. I tell my husband all the time, like, don't make me mad because they'll never find your body. I know way too many. But as for my daughter, gosh, she loves Miss Rachel. I am thankful for Miss Rachel. She is so great. And I don't care what people say, like screen time, I get it. And I try to monitor it, but she's learning sign language. She's learning things faster than you would without her. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And she loves her Disney movies. She's started with Moana. We're now on to the obsession of Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King. So those are our every day on our television over here. And then that's for Cal. He's into all that YouTube stuff himself now. So, I don't get it, but I feel like I'm like the old person. I'm like, I don't get it. Why are you watching some kid play a video game? Like, wouldn't you just rather play that video game yourself? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
But that's just the new age that we were saying we're in with the internet and stuff. So that's what's going on over here.
A big a big thing for YouTube around that like 12, 13-year-old age mark is unboxing videos. They love seeing, they'll like watch a kid unbox.
These kids, Mr. Beast, he's obsessed. They have like the candy bars and they have this and they have that. Mom, he has this mansion. I'm like, it's not his mansion. I'm telling you. He's like, no, it's his house. I'm like, he rents this house to do his videos, but this is not his house. Like these kids are convinced it's real life. And I'm like, it's like beating a dead horse. I'm just like, okay, you'll figure it out what day I'm your own, because I'm not going to argue with you. Yeah, I don't get it.
I love that you said that, like, oh, they're renting that. It is so true. And that's another thing, you know, again, with like the scroll and social media, this is, you know, what I do is like help people, you know, market their businesses or make movies or films or commercials or things like that. And when I first started doing YouTube, it's drastically different than it was now, drastically different than it was 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, I was like, wow, these YouTubers are way more better. Like they're better at making videos than me. And they have a lot of these tech and their editing is on point. And how could they edit all these videos at once and do all these things? And now I know that, oh, they had a team of people. Yeah. That person is a personality and they're a team of people. And back then I was just one person doing it all. Right. So it's so important not to look at somebody's day one or their day 100 or day 1000 and you're on day one. And, I'll never forget, like so the big thing here in Asheville is the Biltmore house, right? This fancy mansion. And we were there once, and showing Dave's uncle who was visiting the Biltmore house. So we're like walking around and there's like this photographer and like crew taking photos of and doing video of this woman. And she's like posing and everything. And so naturally, like Dave and I are talking to the other people behind the camera and like just chatting like, oh, what kind of gear is that? And like we learned that this woman is using this as like, she is like a multi-millionaire, 6-figure, like learn how to, you know, make all this money guru on social media. And she was using like the Biltmore house like as like in the backdrop of all her things, like, and that's not her house. Right. Like that's like, it's a public place. Like it's, you know,
nobody knows.
And it's just, but nobody knows that. They see that on social media and they're like, wow, like, look at, like, she makes a lot of money. I'm going to buy into all the programs that she's selling. And like, I want to make that and I want to do all the things. I love that you mentioned Miss Rachel because I love her as well. And I found out about her because my dad, and this is like prior to the birth of my son, but like, he was like, you need to check out Miss Rachel because she's you. It's like watching you. It's like watching you interact with children. And like, I'm like, what? Like, who is Miss Rachel? And like, finally, like he was born, I put on Miss Rachel and I'm like, okay, I could see it. And just like the things that I do, but Jack loves her. Yeah. It's like, not that I like put it on often and I'm totally with you like on the screen time thing and like trying to limit it, but sometimes I need to get laundry done. Yeah. Sometimes I need to like, you know, so I will like put him and I'm like, here's Miss Rachel. And he's learning, like he's 8 months old and he knows milk. He could go like the all done, like kind of thing. Like that's what we're working on now. More like hunger and like saying that he wants like more and eat and, just like the interaction. And I swear he is saying Indy, the dog's name, like our dog now. And so yesterday I needed to finish decorating the Christmas tree and get all the things done for the house. So I put on Miss Rachel and it was like an animal episode. And she's like, we can pretend to have dogs unless you have a dog. And he like looked at Indy and like was like, Indy, like, and was pointing to the dog. And I'm not making this up. I do have a video of it because I recorded it for my husband. And I'm like, I swear he's interacting with this. And that is what it's all about. But on a positive note too, Miss Rachel is long holds for videos. There's not quick cuts. There's not flashy screens. It's her. So it's as if there is a person in the room.
Yeah, well, she's a teacher.
And having that interaction. Yeah. And having that. Because the thing that you don't want are the fast cuts, are the quick edits, are the flashy colors and all the things like that, because their attention span.
Yeah.
So you want that long format. You want to have that.
Yeah.
But I could continue talking forever with you.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm going to have you like multiple episodes. And I think the next episode will have a theme and kind of like go with that. And
yeah, for sure.
Because I'm so like scatterbrained. And maybe I'll actually shower for that episode.
Oh, we'll name it the one where they showered.
Yes. The one where they showered.
Yeah.
They were clean. Good thing about podcasts and this videos and audios, you can't smell us.
Yeah. Just our husbands in the other room.
Yeah. Well, Dink. Well, Dink. I gotta go. No.
Yeah.
No, this has been so fun. We definitely need to have a giant cup of coffee the next thing as well, and share more casual conversations with Casey.
Yeah.
So thanks for being my guest.
Thanks for having me.
The Foxy Mama podcast is here to entertain and share general insights. Our content is not a substitute for personalized advice from professionals like financial advisors, physicians, or therapists. So enjoy the Foxy vibes, but consult the superheroes for personalized advice.